Our main speaker tonight is Patrick M.
Hi everyone, my name is Patrick and I'm an alcoholic. I want to thank Natalie and Michael for their 10 minutes. That was fantastic. And I want to thank Alan for inviting me to share at my home group tonight. I'm the class of 81. I was told to say that we all have 35 years and none of us thought we'd ever make it, but here we are. And my sponsor is Louis Loy, sitting out front here with me tonight, supporting me, and my friend Bobby from Pacoima and Jim from the Mission. And it's nice to have people come all this way just to hear me share. I was born in Pacoima. No, I was born in Belfast, Northern Ireland. You don't have to be Irish Catholic to be alcoholic, but it helps. I don't know if I was born an alcoholic. I don't know if I inherited alcoholism. But I do believe that when I picked up my first drink, an alcoholic was born in me, because I drank alcoholically ever since. I remember as a child, as a youngster, I always wanted to be like my dad. My dad drank every single day since before I was born, and drank right up to the day he died. And he was in the hospital for 12 months before he died, and they diagnosed him as a chronic alcoholic. But he was a different type of alcoholic than I was. He was married to my mother for over 50 years. He had the same job in the shipyard for 46 years, and he never had trouble with the police in his life. But when I took a drink, I couldn't keep a relationship, I couldn't hold a job, and I'd go looking for cops. So even though my father was a chronic alcoholic, he was a different type of alcoholic than I was. I was a type of alcoholic that I never intended to get drunk, and I never intended to do most of the stuff that I'd done, but I always did it anyway. I remember promising my parents we'd go to special occasions, and they'd say, well, don't show us up, and I'd say, no, I'm only going to have 2. And sure enough, by the end of the evening, I'm insulting your wife for starting a fight or making a fool of myself. And I only intended to have those 2 just to get a buzz on. But I remember my first drink. I was about 11 years old, up the back alley with a bunch of guys. And we had a bottle of wine, and they passed the bottle of wine round, and everybody took a drink out of it, and most of the guys went on about their business. But there was a few of us left, and we said, let's get another bottle. And we got another bottle of wine, and I don't know how many bottles of wine we had that evening, because I found out that day that I'm a blackout drinker too. As a matter of fact, most of my drunkalog is hearsay, People would tell me the next morning what I did the night before. So the only thing I remember about that day was waking up the next morning with my parents screaming at me and asking me which drugs I had done. And I explained that I hadn't done any drugs, and apparently it was okay to do whatever I'd done on booze, but it wasn't okay to do whatever I'd done on drugs. So they let me go, and I was just 11 years old. Now, I didn't start drinking 7 days a week, every day for the rest of my life. I probably got drunk about 3 times more between the age of 11 and 15. And all 3 times I blacked out, and all 3 times I got myself in trouble. But apparently, it seemed like everybody was drinking like I was drinking, and most of the guys I hung out with got in some sort of trouble. So it was okay with my parents as long as I wasn't doing drugs. When I was 15 years old, when you're 15 years old in Ireland, I never heard of college or high school or anything like that. You had to leave school and go to work, get yourself a job. And because you're going to school or because you're going to work and bringing home a paycheck, you became a man at 15 years old. And because you're a man and you got a paycheck, it's okay to go in the pubs. So I'd go in the pubs every Friday night and I'd meet all the guys in there, all the neighbourhood kids. And the only problem was the pubs closed at 10 o'clock in Belfast in those days. So comes 10 o'clock and all us young guys were just starting to get a buzz on, but we'd go to a dance afterwards. The dance was open to midnight. So all the guys would go to a dance and you'd walk in the dance and all the girls were standing this side and all the guys on that side, and we get a few drinks. And some of the guys would get the courage up to go ask the girl to dance. But there were always a few of us that never got enough courage yet, so we'd just keep on drinking. And comes midnight, the guys with the courage are leaving the girls home after the dance, and the rest of us are sitting there twiddling our fingers, what are we going to do next? So someone came up with this bright idea. He said, I know a secret after-hours drinking club. Well, that sounds good. Let's go. So we go to a secret after-hours drinking club. It's so secret, it's in the graveyard. And you have to knock on the door and they throw the key out the top window and you let yourself in and give them the key back. And I remember walking into that club. It was probably about half the size of this room. And it sounded just like this room. It was buzzing, you know. Everybody seemed to be talking, and they had all the Irish music playing, the Irish rabble songs, Kick the Queen and Up the Rabbles and all that good stuff. And I went to that club from I was 15 years old till I was 18 years old, and then never one time remember leaving it. I always remember going in, but I never remember coming out of that club. I remember during the evenings they used to come around and have us sign all these papers, and I thought I was becoming a member of this secret after-hours drinking club. And when I was 18 years old, the war broke out in Ireland, and I came to find out that those papers, it was an IRA club. And the papers that I was signing were something to do with that, I don't know. But they came looking for me, and the first day the trouble started, there was no work. All the jobs stopped, so there's nothing else to do, only go to a pub. So we'd all go to a pub every day, and we'd sit there and talk treason, and we'd go out in the afternoons, and we'd shoot at the British soldiers or go blow something up just for fun, you know. I was 18 years old. I didn't know what the hell. I didn't know anything about anything. So I was just having fun, a head full of, a belly full of booze and a head full of these Irish rabble songs. During the time that I went to this secret after-hours club, I learned to really dislike Catholic or Protestants. I had never met a Protestant in my life, but I really hated these guys because of the rabble songs. And I really hated Englishmen. I'd never met an Englishman. I was 18 years old. I'd never met a Protestant or an English person, but I hated their guts. Because they, with all these songs, they were torturing the Irish and keeping us down and all this stuff. So I got in so much trouble. I was done this for a couple of years. We'd just think nothing and going out in the evening and sniping on the British soldiers, having lots of fun. But I got myself in so much trouble. My mother didn't ask me to leave home. She told me to leave the goddamn country altogether. So I had to leave Ireland, and I went across to London, England, and everything was going to be different. The only problem was I moved in with an Irish family, and there was 8 brothers and the father and myself. There was 10 of us. And we'd go out on a Friday night, and we'd walk into pubs in London, and everybody would clear off out when they seen us coming. Because at that time, the Irish were blowing the pubs up in England and London. So they thought we were going to blow the pub up, and they'd all leave. But there was always a few guys that didn't give a shit if you blew the pub up or not. They were alcoholics. And so we became friendly with these guys. And one evening, the guy gave me some money and he asked me to go buy a round of beer. And I went and bought the round of beer and gave him his change back. And he said, "What'd you think?" I said, "What the hell are you talking about?" He said, "That was counterfeit money." I said, "Wow, that's fantastic." He said, "How would you like to do this on a regular basis?" And I said, "Sure." So I started changing this money on a regular basis. Now, if you asked me to change counterfeit money today, I'd go to Home Depot or a big store or something, you know. But in those days, I had to go in the pub. And I'd go in the pub and I'd buy a drink and I'd get to change as counterfeit money. The only problem was, the more I drank, the more money I wanted. The more money I had, the more I drank. And the more I drank, the more money I wanted. And it became a vicious circle. So, Tammy told me it's not a circle, it's something else. She told me what to say tonight. I can't remember a thing. Thank God she dressed me, though. So anyway, it became a vicious circle. I don't know what it was. And I got arrested 67 times in 18 months. I didn't get arrested once for changing counterfeit money. I got arrested for peeing in the street, peeing on buses, falling asleep on buses, jaywalking, everything alcoholics get arrested for, I got arrested during those 18 months. And I remember going up in front of a judge and he'd say, "You're too young to be doing this, son." And I'd say, "Yes, Your Honour, I'd never do it again." And he'd fine me £1 or a day in jail. Well, I'd pay the £1. I don't know if it was counterfeit or not. But I'd pay the £1, go straight over to the pub and celebrate, and be up in front of the very same judge next morning or Monday morning again. Well, by this time I was starting to wear my welcome out and in London, and I got a phone call from an old girlfriend in Ireland, and she was living up in the north of England and asked me if I'd like to go up to the north of England and live, and I said sure. This girlfriend, she was from Belfast, and she had a little brother called Kevin, and I don't know if you've ever been. Tim Malloy will tell you there's two roads in Belfast. There's the Falls Road for Catholics and the Shankill Road for Protestants. And if your name is Patrick or Kevin, all the Catholics are named after saints. And all the Protestants are named after kings and queens and all that junk. And that's how you can tell the Catholics from the Protestants, by their name. So I took Kevin out one night and I was going to show him how to drink. And the Falls Road and the Shankill Road meet in the centre of town. And I guess we went into the wrong pub. And I don't know because I blacked out, but I woke up the next morning with the British soldiers knocking on my door asking me what happened last night, and I couldn't remember. And I found out that Kevin was executed. They put a hood over his head and shot him. Just because he was Catholic. And shortly after that, I had to leave Belfast. That's one of the reasons I left. But that type of thing happened on a regular basis. And so his sister asked me if I'd like to go to the north of England, and I said, sure. And I went up to the north of England, and she said, would you like to get married? And I said, sure. So we got married. I don't know exactly how long we were married for. I started drinking an awful lot at the time. It was about 3 or 4 years, I guess. And we had a little boy in that marriage. And I decided to settle down, and I got myself a job. I'm a scaffolder. I've been scaffolding for over 50 years now. I'm getting the hang of it. So I got myself a job with the scaffold crew. And there's 12 of us in the crew. The only problem was we had to travel all over Europe every 3 months. We had to go to different cities and towns and countries every 3 months. And the problem with that was there'd always been a crew there before us. And the crew before us had been 86th because they'd get in fights and do stuff. So we all had to stay in construction camps. So for the next 12 years, I stayed in construction camps, and there's nothing else to do there, only play cards, drink, and go to work. And that's what I did for the next 12 years. And I remember on these camps, they used to show us these safety movies. And I said, a little nut this size, falling from 100 feet, could go straight through a hard hat and kill you. It was like a .22 rifle. Well, I was working 400 and 500 feet up in the air, and I was dropping wrenches and tubes this size. Back in those days, they didn't have cell phones or computers or anything like that. They used to send you a telegram with a ticket in it, and it says, this is your next job, and you go to the next job. Of course, the telegram stopped coming for Patrick. And I eventually got my last telegram, and it says, we're sorry you're putting people's lives at danger. Here's a ticket home back to England. So I went back to England, and I went back with an ex-wife of mine. I asked her if she'd put me up, and she agreed, and I promised I'd go look for a job, But where the hell do you go look for a job? You go in the pub. So I'd go in the pub every day looking for a job. Come out at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock drunk, never got a job, and after a couple of weeks of this, she asked me to leave. So I proceeded, during that 12 years, I would go home periodically, and I'd go to the pub, and I'd buy everybody drinks because I had a 3-month paycheck, and I had drinks for everybody. And I'd also go back to Ireland occasionally, and I remember one time I went back to Ireland. I don't know if it was for a wedding or a funeral, but my big sister left me up to the airport, and the British soldiers wouldn't let me on the plane. And they called the cops, and the cops wouldn't arrest me because I was just a nuisance. I hadn't done anything wrong. And my sister said, well, we don't want him here. So I'm standing in the airport, and nobody wanted to have anything to do with me. And eventually, after an hour or two talking to the soldiers, they decided to let me on the plane. And the moral of the story is my sister looked me right in the eye and she said, don't ever show your face here again. I'd heard that story 1,000 times from my parents, school teachers, bosses, women, barmen. Everybody I'd ever met in my life practically told me, don't ever show your face again. But I never heard it until my big sister said, don't ever show your face here again. And I heard it for the first time, and I got on that plane back to England, and I cried the whole way back, and that's when I really became a 24/7 drinker. I started drinking at people. I started drinking at everybody that told me never to show my face again. And I was going to show them. And nobody loved me, but I was going to show them. And after my wife threw me out for the last time, I proceeded to go round some of my old friends. I'd been buying them drinks for the last 12 years. And they were willing to buy me a few drinks and maybe put me up on the couch for one night, but nobody was willing to give me a place to stay or a job. So I worked my way down into Skid Row, in the streets of Skid Row. I was there for about 9 months or 12 months, I don't know exactly how long, but during that time, I slept in a lot of weird places, and I drank a lot of strange stuff, and I did a lot of weird stuff too. One of our favourite places to sleep was in a brickyard, where they baked the killings all day long, and they'd turn the killings off, but they'd stay warm all night. So all the bums and the winos used to go in there at night time. The only problem was you'd wake up in the morning covered with this red brick dust. I don't know if you've ever been to England, but they say when you can't see the chimneys, it's going to rain, and when you can see them, it's raining. It's always raining, it's cold and damp and miserable. So we'd wake up in the morning covered with this red brick dust, and we'd walk out into the rain, and it would just streak down my face. and my hair was red and hard. My clothes, here in California, they give you a T-shirt when you work in construction, and back there they give you what's called a donkey jacket. Got leather shoulders, leather elbows, keep you warm and dry. And I'd wore this jacket on the job for a few years, and I'd lived in the streets with it. And when I took it off with the red brick dust, you could stand it up on its own. It was hard and red. So that I hear people say when they came to Alcoholics Anonymous, they were a mess. I'm here to tell you, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I was a mess. I couldn't even get close enough to people to panhandle off them. People would actually cross the street when they see me coming because they didn't want to brush up against me and get this red brick dust on their clothes, so they would cross the street. So it's not for me to do, only sit in the public park all day and or the public bus station and panhandle. So I'm sitting in the public bus station one day, panhandling, and a guy sat down next to me and he recognized me. I'd worked with him several years previous, and he was a Skid Row bum at the time. He was working day labour on a job that I was on, and I became friendly with him because I'd buy him a couple of drinks and he'd do all my chores for me. Excuse me. So we became friends. And he told me he was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And he asked me if I'd like to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. I said, no, thank you. That's very nice for you. My problem isn't booze. My problem is slow horses, fast women, and bad luck. It's got nothing to do with the booze. Because back in England, you know, there's a bookies on every corner, and you back the horses all the time, and you're being in the pub Saturday, everybody being in the pub. So we did a lot of gambling, so that was my problem. It wasn't the booze. So he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. He told me he had a wife and a car and a house and a job and everything, and I said, man, that's fantastic. He says, and I got it just for staying sober, and I said, wow, that's great. He said, how would you like to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous with me? And I said, no, they're a bunch of holy joes there, a bunch of do-gooders, you know. So he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll pay for a hotel bill for you for a week. I know where I can take you and get you cleaned up, and I know where I can get you a job tomorrow. I thought, boy, these really are holy joes and do-gooders. I know a lot of people here have lived on Skid Row. And you know, every one of us on Skid Row, we all had a plan. Some of us were going to go to work. Some of us were waiting for our parents to die and leave us some money. We're all waiting for our ship to come in, you know. And the only plan I could come up with was, I'm going to be panhandling someday. Somebody's going to give me a check for $1 million, and that'll be it, you know. That was my problem and my plan. So I thought, boy, these AAs are going to look after me and take care of me for the rest of my life. So he took me to his friend's house, and he got me dressed up in some of his friend's old clothes and got me showered and everything. And he took me to dinner, and he paid for the hotel bill for me. And he took me to my first meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, the AA in England 35, 36 years ago was like it used to be here in the 50s and 60s. There's no high-bottom drunks. There's no drug addicts. There's no pretty girls. Mostly all old guys like Clancy. Mostly all Skid Row bums. And there was no big meetings like this for sure. A big meeting was 15 people. So he took me to my first meeting in the hospital, and there was about 8 people there, and maybe 4 teeth between the whole meeting, including mine. I knew almost everybody in the room. I'd met them on the streets, and we'd crossed paths on the streets, and I knew most of them. And so there was only enough people where you could go around the room and everybody got to share. Well, I couldn't hear nothing. The only thing I could think of was I'm going to sleep in a real bed tonight. And that's the only thoughts that was going through my head. I think I thought a little bit about the dinner he bought me too. And I couldn't think of nothing else what people were saying. And eventually it got to this old lady. Her name was Winnie. Now, when I knew Winnie, she was a bag lady on Skid Row. She had red hair, red clothes, and they didn't have shopping carts in those days. She had a baby carriage or a baby. She kept all her belongings in a pram. That's what we call them. And all her belongings were covered in red brick dust, and everything we owned and possessed was red. But here was Winnie sitting at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and she had beautiful white hair. In those days, when people went to a meeting, people used to dress up just to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Guys wore suits, women wore dresses. I mean, they couldn't very well dress down anyway. They all came off of Skid Row and were all covered in red brick dust. But they all dressed up just to go to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And here was Winnie. She had beautiful white hair, she had a dress on, and she had makeup on, and she had beautiful white skin, soft white skin. And I thought she was about 90 years old when I knew her on the streets, but she was probably just 50 or something. But anyway, and she had a full set of teeth in, and she was sitting holding hands with a guy called John. And they were living together, and they were talking about this little apartment they had and how happy they were, and she mentioned God, and I could literally see a light all around her. And then she was holding hands with John. When I knew John, he was a bum in a wino living on Skid Row. And everything he owned and possessed was covered in red brick dust. And he had red hair, red clothes, and here he was, and he had beautiful, big, thick head of white hair. And he wore a suit and tie, and he had a full set of teeth in. The teeth didn't fit too good. I think he... Believe it or not, in those days, they used to go to the morgue to get their glasses and their teeth. I think John took a wrong turn and went to a vet and got them from a donkey. So anyway, and John was talking about how happy he was, and wasn't life just wonderful? And I thought to myself, wow, if they can do it, maybe I can do it. Maybe I can get myself a little menial job someplace and a room with a little gas ring to do my cooking on. I'll be a happy camper. That's all I wanted when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I got to tell you, 35 years later, I got so much more. I got 2 gas rings. No, only joking. Today, I'm in a healthy relationship, Tammy and I. We do this AA thing together. We sponsor people. There's always someone at our house. We're always working with people, and we do a lot of AA. And I believe we're a fellowship of men and women, so we travel together, and when she talks, I go with her, and when I talk, she goes with me, and we do everything together. And AA is what we do in our life. Since I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, to America, I started a little business when I got here. And I've had my business for over 30 years now. I got several families that I've been able to support for over 30 years, my employees. And they've stayed with me for 30 years, some of them. And that little kid that I had when I was in that marriage, I walked out on that lady and left her with no alimony, no nothing, and just walked away and left her with a little boy, and she wanted to kill me when I left. Today, when I go back to England, I stay with her and her husband in their home, her and her new husband, because I was able to make amends in Alcoholics Anonymous. The little boy that I hadn't seen for 15 years just walked out on him. He's coming to stay with Tammy and I in the summertime and bring my 2 little grandkids with him. Simply because I was able to make amends at Alcoholics Anonymous. That big sister that told me never to show my face again. Tammy and I went home like a year or 2 ago, and she put us up in her master bedroom, and it was like the return of the prodigal son. But before that, when I was about 10 years sober, I went back to Ireland for a funeral or a wedding, I don't know. And she said, "Can I have lunch with you tomorrow? Me and my husband, Dennis." And I said, "Sure." I thought, oh God, here we go again, you know. She's going to tell me, she told me never to show my face again. So I met her for lunch, and she sat me down. She said, "I want what you have. You're not my big brother, and I want to know how the hell you've done it." And I said, "I just quit drinking. I go to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I didn't preach to her or anything like that." And since then, my whole family has read the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. I got several nephews and nieces on the program, and all the rest of them need it. But I've been able to 12-step some of them on the phone, and it's all because of making amends and Alcoholics Anonymous. Before my father died, I was illegal in America for 10 years. Thank God, that different president then. I was illegal in America for 10 years, and I was at a meeting one day, and a guy said, "Patrick, I'm putting my nephew in for a green card for a lottery. Do you want me to put your name in?" And I said, "Sure." So I put my name in the lottery, and I won a green card. The only thing was I had to go back to London to do all the paperwork. So when I'm back in London, I thought, I've been talking to my father on the phone for 12 months, trying to make amends to him. He was on his deathbed. And I thought, well, I'll go back to Belfast and see my dad. I got to spend a week with him and tell him I loved him and made the best amends I could at the time. And I was on my way back to London, and they called me and said, "Your dad passed away." And the doctors and nurses said he just stayed sober so he could see you, and I'd like to believe that, but anyway, that's what happened. A few months later, I was able to send my mother a ticket, and she came out here and spent a month with me in California. And if you're a kid back in Ireland, it's beyond your wildest dreams ever to see Disneyland, especially 30 years ago. Well, I took my mother to Disneyland, and she ran around Disneyland like a 2-year-old. And I took her to Vegas, and we stayed in Caesar's Palace. And in those days, they had telephones in the toilet in the suite in Caesar's Palace. So my mother ordered up a brandy, got on the telephone in the toilet, and called up Ireland and says, "Your brother's a millionaire. He's doing great." But I got to make somewhat amends to my mother because of Alcoholics Anonymous. And a lot of other stuff has happened to me. This past few years, Tammy's father got ill, and he's European. I promised him he wouldn't have to go in a home, so I was able to change diapers and help him out, and he died with dignity in his own home. And her mother's 80-odd years old. I take her to doctors, and I take care of little things around the house for her, because I'm able to make a living amends that I couldn't make to my parents. Tammy's ex-husband a couple of years ago fell very ill, as a lot of people know, and he was in the hospital on life support for several months, and then he was in a nursing home for several months, and they said he could never walk or talk again. And so Tammy and I said, well, we'll take him in, and we decorated downstairs, or we fixed up downstairs, bedroom and stuff. And her husband Rick has been living with us for 2 years now, and he was able to walk his daughter down the aisle. They said he'd never walk again, and he was able to walk his daughter down the aisle, and he was able to have the father-daughter dance with her, and he can walk and talk now, and he goes to the gym every day. He's healthier than me. And he's a nice guy, and people said, well, how can you live with the ex-husband? And, well, you know, Tammy and I taken a lot of drugs. And why wouldn't I take the kid's father in, you know? And not only that, he's a nice guy to boot. So Tammy lived, and then her son last year got diagnosed with a bad illness, and while he was in hospital, his girlfriend had a little baby. So Tammy and I are taking care of a little grandkid now too. So we have a full house for turkey tomorrow. But you know what? Thanks to Alcoholics Anonymous, it's okay. And there's no fighting in that house, and it's a peaceful house, and it's going to be a grateful gratitude Thanksgiving dinner tomorrow, and everybody there has something to be grateful for, and that's because of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I'll finish with this. I got sober. I came to America 33 years ago, and I got sober with some guys, and we used to hang out together, a whole bunch of us, and we had the same sponsor, and we went to the same meetings, and we had jobs and girlfriends and everything that that we do when we're young and new. I see these people periodically. I think there's only 2 of us still sober. And I seen one guy panhandling in the parking lot. His father used to sponsor me. And about 4 or 5 weeks ago, he hung himself. And I say, why him and why not me? Why did I stay sober? And I just can't answer that. I think he was a much better person than I was. He was certainly smarter than I was. He was better, well, I don't know about better looking, but he was a nice guy, and I think it's because I had a complete psychic change. And in other words, my thinking changed. And I think good things today, and I do good things today. As a result of that, I'm the best Patrick that's ever been, and the happiest Patrick that's ever been. And if you're new here, don't do what that guy done and all those other guys. What happened was they became periodic drinkers. They drank every 6 months or every 4 years or every 3 years. All they did was change their drinking pattern. What we do in Alcoholics Anonymous is we stop drinking. We don't get on the wagon. The wagon's a transport between drinks. We don't get on the wagon. We don't change our drinking patterns. We stop drinking in here. And if you stop drinking in here, you got a fighting chance. I have a mighty, powerful God in my life today who walks with me on a daily basis. I hope each and every one of your God walks with you too. Thank you for having me this evening.